couple of examples here from an envisioning phase, and this is work with a high fashion retailer. In this particular framework, this is one of the ones that we like to start with. On the y-axis, you have customer value, and on the x-axis, you have the length of the relationship. And this is derived from actually using analytics to comb through the longitudinal point-of-sale transaction data. And I've used that phrase a couple of times, and I'll probably use it a couple of more. What I mean by longitudinal point-of-sale transaction data is I'm looking at the purchases that they've placed with me as a brand over some period of time. And that's where this notion of longitudinal comes in. Because what happens is that when you look at patterns of purchases over a period of time across a population of customers, patterns start to emerge. We like to think of ourselves as individuals, and we probably believe that our purchase patterns are very unique to us as individuals, but in reality we tend to cluster and group into some big blocks and segments as a U.S. population or a U.K. population or a French population, and we node out into some very distinct segments. In this particular instance, we're zeroing in on an example here where the primary product relationship was that of a rugby. The secondary product relationship was that of a pair of jeans. And so while those are both in the clothing primary category, you'll notice that we're beginning to switch subcategories from tops to pants. And that's important because that is a key indicator of higher lifetime value when you've got shopping happening in multiple categories or multiple subcategories. And the tertiary product demand here was really in the accessories category around this notion of belts and boots. And again, you see this particular customer shifting a sub-product category again, and so that's a demonstration or an indication of things that would suggest high forward-looking customer lifetime value. And so part of this exercise was to really understand that this life cycle and the way that people purchased products and services, the distance between those purchases, we would describe that as the inner purchase time between the purchase of the rugby, the purchase of the jeans, purchase of the belt, the purchase of the boots. That inner purchase time is also pretty predictive of who's going to be a very valuable customer tomorrow. In addition to that, one of the key things that we want to do is we want to not only increase the hump of this curve, if you will, the vertical height, but we want to increase the length on the backside by recommending to them a product that they should buy next. So we're wanting to extend the area under this curve. And so the way that you do that is you need to inventory the source data assets that you have within your organization and get some understanding of what you can use to influence customer lifetime value. And so this is an example of a data use grid then that was used to support that overall customer life cycle. And it's represented by 4 different types of data that span our definition of big data that we talked about in the beginning. The first category of data that was critically important here was point-of-sale transactions. And from those point-of-sale transactions alone, we could articulate the life cycle chart that you saw on the previous slide. One of the key challenges that you have with just that data set alone, though, it is a structured data set, so that's good and it's easy to work with. However, it is very infrequent, meaning that it's pretty chunky in nature. And so your predictions off of that type of data set will be somewhat chunky as well. And what I mean by chunky is that it lacks granularity. The inner purchase time is very long, and so you don't have that many data points with which to make a prediction off of. And if you're wanting to be predictive about what a customer is going to do next, it's always better to have more frequent, more granular data points to bring into the overall equation. And we're really trying to get to that final outcome of what's the customer going to buy next. We have a more granular data set that exists within this high fashion retailer, and that is their e-commerce transactions that we can do some level of online-offline matching to. And as I mentioned, we see transactions in there for a belt as well as 2 purchases for pairs of boots. So it gives you more of the story, but it's still not a complete story overall. This is a structured data set, and it's happening more frequently. This is more of a monthly type of data set. And obviously this varies by customer, it varies by product category, but the inner purchase time for these accessories that are happening through e-commerce is of a higher velocity, going back to our very first page in our definitions. Another really important data set in this particular equation was product returns. And the product returns historically had been just looked at from a structured data standpoint, meaning that customers who buy X or customer X returned product Y on October 15th at 8:30 p.m. But there was some very interesting contextual data that surrounded that product return. It was also very valuable to us on a forward-looking basis. These boots are too small, so that explains why we see two sets of transactions in the e-commerce data, because the first set of boots were too small, they didn't run the right size, now they're purchasing the right size of boot. However, there's also a very interesting contextual piece of information in there that says, I like this year's tweed hunting coat, which begins to give us some level of additional data to make a prediction about next logical product off of. And if I combine that with my point of sale transactions from above, customers that have purchased the rugby and have purchased the pair of jeans seem to show some level of probability of buying a sport coat of some sort. And now I have some contextual unstructured data and product returns that suggest to me that that likelihood of a sport coat purchase is actually probably going to be in the tweed hunting coat category. If you bring in the unstructured stream level data from Twitter and Facebook, and you see likes and mentions of the tweed hunting coat and of things similar to the tweed hunting coat, your probabilistic outcome there goes up very, very strongly. And like I said, we can get to about an 88% accuracy. So in this particular instance, what we did, we're still in that pre-analytics phase. We've taken a notion of what we believe that the customer life cycle will be. We've lined up the different types of data that we believe are going to be required to predict what that next logical product would be. And we've got that inventoried now in a data use grid. And so what this tells us as an organization is that we want to go invest first in getting our point of sale transaction data usable, combining that and matching it with our e-commerce data, and trying to pull up some additional data points from our product returns and see if there's additional insight that we can glean from social media.